Throughout this and previous courses, we've often discussed the terrible institution of slavery. As we return to the subject today, we'll look at some powerful and sometimes disturbing images. However, they're important for helping us understand the real experiences of those who lived through slavery. If needed, pause the video at any time to reflect or talk to a trusted adult about your feelings. We encourage you to take care of yourself throughout the lesson. You may already know that slavery was never limited to one place or time. It existed for centuries across continents in almost every early civilization. Enslaved people built cities, worked on farms, and served rulers, but they were denied basic human rights. But wherever slavery existed, so did resistance. Change came slowly, but it happened thanks to those who fought for their freedom in different ways. One powerful voice from the 18th century was Olaudah Equiano, an African man who was captured and enslaved. Equiano later wrote about his experiences. He asked, "Is it not enough that we are torn from our country and friends to toil for your luxury and lust of gain?" What do his words mean? Pause here to respond. Equiano's words reveal the deep injustice of slavery, a system that stripped millions of their basic human rights, often took them from their homes and families, all to make others wealthy. Thanks to people like Equiano, resistance grew as more people demanded equality for all. That brings us to today's world history mystery. How does the impact of centuries of slavery still shape the world today? We'll answer that question as we explore slavery's history, its impact on human rights, and its long-term effects on the world. Are you ready, historians? Slavery can be described as an institution where individuals or groups were told where to live and what to do, and never got paid for their hard work. That was the reality for millions of people throughout history who were enslaved. Slavery existed for thousands of years across many civilizations. Take a moment to think about examples of slavery throughout world history. What specific places or events do you remember? Pause here to respond. In ancient Egypt, enslaved peoples were forced to build massive temples and pyramids under harsh conditions. In Greece, enslaved workers ran households, labored in mines, and even taught children. Rome relied heavily on enslaved labor for farming, gladiator combat, and public building projects. In West Africa, some societies enslaved prisoners of war, while in China, enslaved people were often criminals or those in debt. The Mughal Empire in India enslaved war captives and forced them into labor. And in the Americas, European colonizers expanded slavery through the transatlantic slave trade. Millions of Africans were brought to the New World and forced to work on plantations in Brazil, the Caribbean, and North America. Unlike earlier forms of slavery, which often involved criminals, prisoners of war, and those who couldn't pay their debts, slavery in the Americas was based on race. For instance, this map shows where people of African descent live today. Because of the transatlantic slave trade, regions with large African-descended populations, shown in darker green, include Brazil, the US, and the Caribbean. This reflects the lasting impact of slavery on culture and society. Enslaved people endured brutal conditions growing sugar, cotton, and tobacco, crops that made European nations wealthy. But regardless of the location and the time period, slavery was always about power and control. Enslaved people had no rights and no power, and their lives were controlled by others. They were treated as property, bought and sold, and often punished harshly. Families were often torn apart, and many were not allowed to learn to read or write because enslavers feared education would give them power. Yet throughout history, enslaved people found ways to resist. For centuries, enslaved people had no legal protection, no freedom to make choices, and no control over their own lives. This made it difficult for them to change their situation, but resistance occurred. The abolitionist movement in the U.S. before the Civil War is just one example of resistance against slavery, as many fought to end its cruelty and injustice. Abolitionists believed slavery was morally wrong and worked to end it. Leaders like Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth spoke out against slavery and advocated for equality. Meanwhile, Harriet Tubman led enslaved people to freedom through the Underground Railroad, a secret network of routes and safe houses. But resistance didn't come just from abolitionists. Enslaved people protested, revolted, and fought back. They weren't only resisting forced labor, they were challenging a system that denied them basic human rights. Even after slavery was abolished, its effects didn't disappear. If it was outlawed, how did its effects continue to shape societies? Many formerly enslaved people and their descendants faced discrimination, poverty, and violence. The unfair ideas used to justify slavery, such as the belief that some people were less valuable than others, continued to shape laws and societies for generations. For decades, formerly enslaved people were denied basic rights, leaving them and their descendants with few opportunities. Many faced new struggles, such as racism, unfair laws, economic inequality, and violence. In the U.S., Jim Crow laws denied Black Americans the right to vote, own land, or attend the same schools as white people. These laws enforced segregation, meaning Black and white people were kept separate in public places, creating deep inequality. Jim Crow laws lasted for nearly a century, limiting opportunities for Black Americans. In South Africa, apartheid was a system that denied Black citizens equal rights, much like Jim Crow laws in the U.S. It kept people of different races separated in schools, neighborhoods, and public spaces, and gave more power and privileges to white citizens. Apartheid lasted from 1948 to 1994 and created deep divisions and injustice throughout the country. But just as people fought against slavery, they also protested unfair laws and discrimination. Different movements for justice helped to correct the injustices of slavery. Can you think of ways that citizens have fought for equality and freedom? Throughout history, people have stood up against unfair treatment and demanded change. Some used their voices, others marched, and many risked their safety to fight for justice. These efforts didn't just make life better for individuals, they helped transform entire societies. In the U.S., the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s challenged unfair laws that treated Black Americans unequally. Activists like Martin Luther King Jr. led marches, gave powerful speeches, and inspired change, leading to major changes like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed segregation and discrimination. In South Africa, Nelson Mandela fought against apartheid, a system of racial separation and inequality. He was imprisoned for 27 years, but after his release, he was elected president. What can we learn from stories like Nelson Mandela's? His story shows that change is possible, even after great injustice. These movements show that standing up for what is right can lead to real change. The fight for freedom and justice did not end with slavery. It continues today, and every generation, including yours, has the power to make a difference. By learning from the past, we can help build a future where fairness and dignity belong to everyone. While the history of slavery is painful, it is also a story of strength, resilience, hope, and change. Enslaved people fought for their freedom, and generations after them continued the struggle for justice. Because of their efforts, many of the rights once denied to millions are now protected by laws around the world. Though challenges remain, history shows that people can create a more fair and equal society for everyone. By studying slavery and its impact, we can better understand how history has shaped our world and why it's still important even today to stand up for fairness and human rights. Each of us can help create a future where fairness, dignity, and human rights truly belong to everyone. History shows that change is possible. Next time, we take a look at how the roles and rights of women have changed throughout history. Until then, keep exploring the past and shaping the future, and remember to always be clever.
Hey, hey.